Picture this: it's December 20th, 1968, and two teenagers are parked at a secluded lover's lane in Vallejo, California, sharing what they think will be a romantic evening under the stars. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen have no idea that in the next 10 minutes, their lives will end in the most brutal way possible, and their deaths will mark the beginning of one of America's most chilling and unsolved serial killer cases. A hooded figure approaches their car, and without saying a word, fires multiple shots through the window. But here's where this story gets truly terrifying: this wasn't just a random act of violence. This was the calculated first move of a killer who would terrorize Northern California for years, send cryptic coded messages to newspapers, and taunt police with phone calls, all while never being caught. The Zodiac Killer didn't just want to kill, he wanted to play a deadly game with the entire world watching. The first attacks. What makes the Zodiac case so uniquely horrifying is how methodical and theatrical this killer was from the very beginning. After murdering David and Betty Lou, the killer disappeared into the night, leaving behind virtually no evidence except for the brutal crime scene. But this was just the warm-up. 7 months later, on July 4, 1969, the killer struck again at Blue Rock Springs Park, just 2 miles from the first murder. This time, he approached a car containing Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, shined a flashlight into their faces, and opened fire with a 9mm handgun. Darlene died instantly, but Michael somehow survived despite being shot multiple times. Here's what sent chills down everyone's spine: 40 minutes after the attack, the killer called the Vallejo Police Department from a payphone and calmly said, "I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." The casual, almost conversational tone of his voice was captured on tape, and when you hear it, you'll understand why this case has haunted investigators for over 50 years. The letters begin. But the Zodiac wasn't content with just killing, he wanted fame, recognition, and to prove he was smarter than everyone trying to catch him. On August 1, 1969, 3 newspapers in the San Francisco Bay Area received identical handwritten letters that would change everything. Each letter began with the chilling words, "Dear Editor, I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman Road and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo." The letters contained details about the crimes that only the killer could have known, including the specific ammunition used and the positions of the victims. But here's what made these letters absolutely terrifying: each one contained a piece of a 408-character cryptogram, and the Zodiac demanded that the newspapers print these codes on their front pages. If they didn't comply within a certain time frame, he threatened to go on a killing rampage, promising to collect slaves for his afterlife. The audacity was breathtaking. This killer was literally holding the entire Bay Area hostage through the media. The codes and mind games. The cryptogram was cracked by a local high school teacher and his wife just a week later, and the message it revealed was even more chilling than anyone expected: "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The message continued with the killer's twisted philosophy about collecting slaves for the afterlife, but what made investigators' blood run cold was the realization that this wasn't just a killer, this was someone who saw murder as entertainment and wanted the whole world to know it. The Zodiac had turned serial killing into a public performance, and every newspaper reader, every radio listener, every person in Northern California had become his unwilling audience. The psychological warfare had begun, and the killer was clearly enjoying every minute of it. The Lake Berryessa attack. Just when investigators thought they understood the Zodiac's pattern, he completely changed his approach in the most disturbing way possible. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were having a peaceful picnic at Lake Berryessa when a man approached them wearing an executioner-style hood with a white circle containing a crosshair symbol, the same symbol that would become the Zodiac's calling card. The hooded figure claimed to be an escaped convict who just needed their car and money to get to Mexico. But instead of robbing them, he tied them up and then, in broad daylight, repeatedly stabbed both victims with a knife. Brian survived the attack and provided the most detailed description of the Zodiac ever recorded, describing not just his appearance but his calm, almost conversational demeanor even while committing these horrific acts. What makes this attack even more chilling is that the Zodiac wrote on Brian's car door with a black marker the dates of his previous attacks and this new one, essentially creating a public scorecard of his victims. The Paul Stine murder. The Zodiac's final confirmed kill was perhaps his boldest and most brazen yet. On October 11, 1969, cab driver Paul Stine picked up a passenger in downtown San Francisco who asked to be driven to the Presidio Heights neighborhood. During the ride, the passenger shot Stine in the head, stole his wallet and car keys, and then did something that proves just how confident and calculating this killer was. He tore off a piece of Stine's bloodstained shirt as a trophy. 3 teenagers witnessed the aftermath from their bedroom window and called police, reporting that they saw the killer wiping down the cab and walking away calmly into the night. Police officers Donald Fouke and Eric Zelms actually drove past a man walking away from the scene, but because the initial radio report incorrectly described the suspect as black, they didn't stop the white male they encountered. Fouke later said he got a clear look at the man and described him in detail, but by then, the Zodiac had vanished once again. The piece of Stine's shirt would later appear in the Zodiac's letters as proof that he was indeed the killer. The taunting letters continue. What happened next turned the Zodiac case from a series of murders into a psychological thriller that gripped the entire nation. The killer began sending letters to newspapers not just in the Bay Area, but across the country, each one more taunting and disturbing than the last. He included pieces of Paul Stine's shirt in multiple letters, proving his involvement in the murder. In one particularly chilling letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, he wrote, "School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." The threat was taken so seriously that police began escorting school buses throughout the Bay Area. The Zodiac was no longer just killing individuals, he was terrorizing an entire community and holding thousands of children hostage with fear. His letters often included new cryptograms, some of which have never been solved to this day, and he claimed to have killed many more people than the 5 confirmed victims, boasting in one letter that his victim count had reached 37. The investigation intensifies. The Zodiac case became one of the largest investigations in California history, involving multiple police departments, the FBI, and countless amateur detectives who became obsessed with cracking the codes and identifying the killer. The investigation revealed just how intelligent and methodical this killer was. He carefully planned each attack, chose locations that allowed for quick escapes, and seemed to have extensive knowledge of police procedures and forensic techniques. Handwriting analysts studied his letters, code breakers worked around the clock on his cryptograms, and investigators followed thousands of leads, but the Zodiac seemed to always be one step ahead. What made the investigation even more challenging was the killer's ability to blend into normal society. Witness descriptions suggested he was an ordinary-looking white male in his 20s or 30s, someone who could easily disappear into a crowd. The realization that this calculating killer was living among them, possibly sitting next to them at work or in a restaurant, made the case even more terrifying for Bay Area residents. Suspects and theories. Over the decades, investigators and amateur sleuths have identified numerous suspects, each with compelling evidence and equally compelling reasons for doubt. Arthur Leigh Allen, a convicted child molester, became the prime suspect after a friend reported that Allen had talked about hunting humans and had expressed interest in the Zodiac case before it became public knowledge. Police found circumstantial evidence linking Allen to the crimes, including the same rare ammunition used in the attacks and a Zodiac brand watch, but his fingerprints and handwriting didn't match the evidence from the crime scenes. Richard Gaikowski, a newspaper reporter, became a suspect because of his access to information about the case and his resemblance to police sketches, but again, physical evidence didn't definitively link him to the crimes. More recently, Gary Francis Post was identified by a team of investigators called the Case Breakers, who claimed to have found physical and circumstantial evidence connecting him to the Zodiac murders, but law enforcement agencies have not confirmed these claims. The frustrating reality is that despite decades of investigation and thousands of man-hours, the Zodiac's true identity remains as mysterious today as it was 50 years ago. Modern technology and new developments. In recent years, advances in DNA technology and forensic science have brought new hope to the Zodiac investigation. In 2020, a team of codebreakers finally solved the Zodiac's 340-character cipher, which had remained unsolved for 51 years. The decoded message read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show," which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me. The fact that this cipher was finally cracked using modern computer techniques has given investigators hope that other aspects of the case might finally yield their secrets. DNA testing on stamps and envelopes from the Zodiac letters has produced partial profiles, and genetic genealogy techniques that have solved other cold cases are being applied to the Zodiac evidence. However, the killer's careful methods and the degraded condition of 50-year-old evidence continue to present challenges that even modern technology struggles to overcome. The lasting impact. The Zodiac Killer case has become more than just an unsolved mystery. It's become a cultural phenomenon that has inspired countless books, movies, documentaries, and amateur investigations. The case fundamentally changed how serial killer investigations are conducted, leading to better communication between law enforcement agencies and new protocols for handling threatening letters and cryptograms. The Zodiac's use of media manipulation and public taunting became a template that other killers would later follow, making this case study essential for understanding criminal psychology. Perhaps most significantly, the case demonstrated how a single individual could terrorize an entire region through calculated violence and psychological warfare, holding millions of people hostage through fear and uncertainty. The mystery continues. Today, more than 50 years after the first confirmed Zodiac attack, the case remains officially unsolved, and the killer's identity continues to be one of America's greatest mysteries. The Zodiac claimed responsibility for 37 murders, though only 5 have been definitively confirmed, meaning there could be dozens of additional victims and their families who have never received justice. Every few years, new suspects emerge, new evidence is discovered, or new theories are proposed, keeping the case alive in the public consciousness and giving hope that someday, somehow, this monster will finally be unmasked. The fact that the Zodiac could commit these horrific crimes, taunt law enforcement and the public for years, and then seemingly vanish without a trace represents one of the most frustrating failures in the history of American criminal justice. Closing. The Zodiac Killer case stands as a chilling reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, that intelligence can be used for the most horrific purposes, and that sometimes, despite our best efforts and most advanced technology, justice remains elusive. Somewhere out there, if he's still alive, the Zodiac Killer knows the truth about one of America's most infamous unsolved cases. He knows the faces of his victims, he knows the terror he caused, and he knows that he's managed to commit the perfect crimes and escape justice for over half a century. The question that haunts investigators, amateur sleuths, and true crime enthusiasts around the world remains the same. Who was the Zodiac Killer, and will we ever finally unmask the monster who turned murder into a twisted game? Until that day comes, the Zodiac case will continue to represent both the worst of human nature and our relentless pursuit of truth and justice, no matter how long it takes or how cold the trail becomes.